What up? We're gonna be talking about Lazarus and the problem of suffering, because people think about the story of Lazarus and they say it's all about trusting in God's timing and all of that. But I've been given a separate meaning to this story. So, the story is found in John 11. We're gonna be reading it. It goes all the way to verse 40, So let's read it. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother was Lazarus, now lay sick, was the same one who poured the perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When Jesus heard this, he said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Yet when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. Then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back there." Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk by day will not stumble, for they see by the... Those who walk by day will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when they walk by night that they stumble, for they have no light. After he had said this, he went on telling, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." On arrival, then Thomas said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us go also, that we may die with him." On his arrival, Jesus found Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been there, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she told him. "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was come into this world." And after she had said this, she went back and called Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and he is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Cannot he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. There was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," Martha said, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." This story is so solemn and beautiful, but let's delve deeper into it. You have Jesus, who is told that his dear friend is sick. Jesus knows that he can heal him, but he chooses not to. And yes, this is probably where people get the interpretation of trusting in God's timing, but today we're going to link that to the problem of suffering. People will be like, why does God allow 5-year-old kids with cancer to die? And other people might respond to that saying stuff like, God is taking them away from the evil to come, which is biblical. They might also say that it's a trial for us to endure and trust God in, which is biblical. They might say that it's because man let sin into this world, because the devil is the ruler of this world. All are valid answers, but today we're going to come at it from a different angle. So Jesus chooses to wait a few days after being told that Lazarus is sick. As he said, he's doing this so that they may believe, He said this in verse 14. 50, he says that I am going there now for your sake, that you may believe. So from this, the get-go, Jesus is doing this to reveal his power to the people, because he's healed many people before, but now he's talking about raising someone from the dead. And when Jesus meets Martha. It's Martha. When she meets Martha before actually seeing Lazarus, they're talking about the resurrection, and you need to really notice what tense Jesus is speaking in, because Martha is saying, I know he will rise again at the last day. Martha is thinking about the future, but Jesus is talking about the present. Jesus is saying your brother will rise again, but Jesus is also saying, I am the resurrection. Not I will resurrect. He's saying, I am the resurrection. Those who believe in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? From the get-go, Jesus is testing their faith. He's asking them how much they truly believe in him. And even if they didn't believe in him at all, what he is about to do today will show all of them his power and his might. So Jesus is already focused on resurrecting Lazarus. He's already saying, I am. Present tense, I am the resurrection. But he is saying, he is foreshadowing. And what we need to understand here is that Jesus knows so much more than them, because Jesus is God, right? He knows the future. He knows the past. He knows the present. He knows everything. But the thing is, he can't tell them everything. This links to John 13, verse 7. Jesus said, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. He knows the future, but they don't. So he needs them to wait. So this is also linking in to trusting in God's timing and being patient. But it's more than that, because he's saying, oh, while these 5-year-olds are dying of cancer, where is God in that situation? The problem is you don't know the full picture. You don't know the past or the future. You just know the present, and you just know the suffering that is in the present. But Jesus is saying, even in this present suffering, I am the resurrection, and I am the light. I am so much more bigger than your problems and your trials. Jesus is comforting them before showing them his power. And what we need to do in situations where we are faced with trials is take comfort in what Jesus has said about us. He said, whoever believes in me will live, even though they die. Even though they die. Jesus is also talking about the future. Not just God's timing, but God's truth in his word when he says that they will live. It's not just about the present suffering. It's about the bigger picture and what will happen in the future, regardless of what is happening in the present. Again, Mary is saying, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. She is looking at the present as Martha was looking at the present, but Martha also thought about the future in the last day. But Mary here is saying she's actually thinking about the past, and Jesus is so moved by this that he cries, and he's not just crying because his best friend is dead, or that people are saying that he should have been there 2 days ago. People who are questioning his choices and realize, why weren't you there? You could have saved him. They don't know the full picture. All right, they've probably never even seen a resurrection happening before. They've already been told about the resurrection in the future. So that's why they find it so hard to think about the future and now the present or the past, because they don't know what the future holds. But Jesus does. That's why he weeps. Not just because his friend is dead, but because he can't tell them about the future. He just has to hope that they wait patiently, So the problem of suffering is not just a present issue. It's not just a past issue. It's not just a future issue. It's all of those combined. And only when we know the full picture will we be able to understand why Jesus is doing this, why things are happening as they are, Again, Jesus is saying, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe in me. Jesus is hinting that he knows more than them. He obviously does know more than them. But he is saying this, he is doing this now, so that they can see a glimpse of the future. A glimpse of his power, what he can do. Things that can make them believe in him and trust in him no matter what comes their way. Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And he said, take off the grave clothes and let him go. This grave clothes is symbolic because it's all about the past. People who are stuck in the past cannot even comprehend thinking about the future because they are so whatever, I forgot the word, but they are so fixated on the past. They probably don't even care about the future because they can't let the past go. Jesus said, let him go. Let him go. Jesus is seeing a new man. Once dead, he was now alive. And yes, this does mirror his resurrection in the future. But the thing about grave clothes is that they're all about your past self. How much of your past self are you willing to let go before Jesus can transform your life? How much of your grave clothes are you willing to take off, to burn, before you let yourself go, let yourself be free from sin and all that bondage of doubt, of worry, of anxiety, before you let Jesus take them away from you, So this story isn't just about, it is about trusting God's timing, but it's about trusting God's timing because we don't know the full picture, because we don't know why he's doing things in certain ways, why he's letting things happen as they are happening. Trusting God is not just about being patient. It's about knowing that the future is going to happen in the way that it will happen, because God has ordained it to happen in that way, So, yeah, I was reminded of this story yesterday, and I'm really glad and pleased that I actually took the time in today to read it, because the story is so beautiful, man. It shows Jesus' humanity. It shows his omnipotence. It shows his godness, if that is even a word. But it just shows so many sides of Jesus all in one story. His omniscience, omnipotence, his omnibenevolence, right? His love in the people around him to not just heal the sick, but to raise the dead, so that they might believe. He didn't say that they will believe. He said that they might believe, because some people still have hardened hearts, and that hardened hearts isn't letting them see the full picture. So it's not just about being fixated on the past and all the traditions in the past. It's about transforming your mind, renewing your mind to be able to accept new things and think about the future, and just trusting God in general,